Yeah, see the other maple tree.
Okay.
You can never see it.
Hi.
Can you see?
She's here.
Welcome to Brunch and Learn. I'm Lori Bracolo, and normally I'm behind the camera, but today Janine is, because she's really good at narrating what we're doing, is behind the camera, and you'll hear most of her comments as we proceed on several different kinds of pruning techniques. And Jay, I'm going to turn it right over to you because we were going to talk about, what we have on display. Some are already pruned.
All right. What we're going to talk about today is a whole multitude of tips on pruning, and it's not something that you can just teach in an hour or a half an hour. People spend years perfecting these techniques and learning and doing. So it's something that this is a guide. And another reason why to hire a professional should you not have the knowledge or the expertise or the guts to start chopping away at your plants. I hope you can hear me okay. I hope you can hear Lori okay. We're going to discuss the tools. We're going to discuss tips, things like uplifting, things like renovating, thinning, things that will need air and moisture to get out of there, and sunlight to get in. We're going to talk about special techniques like topiary and espalier, which would be for a more advanced special person who has a lot of training and a lot of artistic ability. And we're going to go through a few of these. We have first an example, and I wanted to tell you that we have a live audience here today. We thank our audience for joining us. Yay! And they're going to stick around after. Yay! Give yourselves a hand. And they're going to stick around, and they're going to, I'm just going to show our audience. There we go. Yep. And we're going to have them stick around, and they're going to ask a lot of questions, and we're going to give them some handouts. So thanks for coming, you guys. So the first plant we have is going to be a Japanese maple that Lori's going to show. Has a lot of balance. The scaffolding branches are at good angles or good crotches, and they also have a good width at the bottom, and it shapes to a gentle crown at the top. The leaders aren't overly heavy or overly tall, and it really has some nice balance. It's been trimmed properly to let airflow and sunlight in, and it's got a good amount of balance. That is leaves on the branches covering them. There's little tiny branches that you don't have to worry about. Let me just show you real quick. There we go. There's little tiny spriglets that you can just snap with your hands in a Japanese maple. They show up in the spring. They're just gray, and she's just snapping them off with your hand. They're dead. They're not going to come back miraculously. But you can see the spacing between all those branches. There is a nub, I see, Lori, on the right side of the lower branch, and then we don't want a stump. We want to cut that, and she's going to take that little nub.
So it looks like this came from a nursery, and somebody must have pruned that in the nursery improperly right in the middle. You always want to prune right at the angle, right above your other branch, and making sure that it is at an angle so that it will heal over. Because a stub, so I got a little point here, I'm going to re-prune that because I don't like that little stub there. So now it can grow over and heal.
Just like a callus or a paper cut, it will heal. You don't have to put anything special on it. In the years past, people used to put wax or paints and things. We've kind of moved away from that. Just like you could put a Band-Aid on your finger, but it basically, if you put, don't put anything on it, it's going to heal about the same. And it's better to have no place for bugs or fungi or mold to hide.
I don't know if you noticed this. One of the things is thinning, and this branch it caught my eye because it's brown, it's kind of callous, because it's been rubbing on another branch.
Yep, so she's got one that's upright, and that one needs to be removed because it's conflicting with other branches.
So the decision is
which one to
entire branch.
Moving it sometimes is the solution.
Yeah, sometimes we can just move them.
Yep.
Actually. In fact, we could do that. And now we've trained it so that it's going out this way, and I can prune off some of these other small ones that would be interfering with it.
Right. So the 3 Ds of pruning would be dead, damaged, which is causing that rubbing, or diseased. And usually when you do a diseased pruning, you kind of are in trouble. You got to make sure you get 4 to 6 inches above and below the diseased part, disinfect your pruners with Clorox or some other disinfectant, bleach, that kind of thing, in between cuts when you have a disease situation. So she's just doing some little trimming here, but those 3 Ds, diseased, damaged, or dead. And what she's using is we're going to talk a little bit about tools today. She's using a bypass pruner, which is a slicing type of pruner that doesn't crush. It's for live tissue, cuts at an angle, it's very sharp, and
It's very sharp. In fact, the other day I was cutting
she got herself.
and
Who hasn't done that? Right. Yeah. So those are bypass pruners, and they're going to be used for live tissue. Now, an anvil pruner is a crushing. It's got a blunt edge. We don't have any anvils because we don't trim dead stuff around here. Why bother? So we don't have any dead stuff. Ha ha ha. Anyway, so I do see, Lori, on the left side, one little gray. I'll see kind of pointing at a right angle. Can you see it on the left side? About 11 o'clock, 10 to 11 o'clock. Just a little gray snub. 10 o'clock. Keep going to your left. No, left. To your left. Straight ahead. Right there. Yep, right. Close to your hand. There you go.
This little guy?
Yep. He's got to go.
Alright.
Yep.
And now?
And a couple of
Now
little
I see
stubs
this
in
little
there.
lump
Yep.
here too that will never heal there.
Right.
So
So we don't want those rubbing because that'll just be open to disease and fungi and things like that. So we don't want those damaged rubbing branches.
speaking of tools, though,
Oh, look
I
at
just
that.
want to mention this one, which is a little more expensive, but when you have arthritis, wow.
When you've been pruning for 40 some odd years or 60 years or whatever, you've got to have tools that are comfortable. And really, it pays to keep them sharpened, oiled, and keep them comfortable so you're inclined to use them rather than getting your little scissors out and doing stuff that doesn't look so good. It's also healthier for the plant.
How do you sharpen them?
Good question. We have how do you sharpen them?
I take them to my mechanic.
We grind them. My husband likes to grind ours on the grinder. I have a file. I have a fine file. I go in the direction of the cutting edge, which will turn silvery. And that we can show you guys after.
Similar to a knife sharpening
Yes,
tool?
I'm going in the same direction, and I'm using the file. And I like to do mine with a file. I'm scared of those sparks on the grinder. I'm a chicken. So my husband does the grinder stuff, or I do my file. And I just use that file. And I've heard of diamond type pens and things like that, which Nellie Gardner likes, and shout out to Nellie. And things like that other pros use. So
And
a holster,
replacement blades.
Yep.
I've had these for years, but just replace the blades.
Yep. And she also has a holster. I want you guys to see that we also have a pouch, and this protects your. I have known of a person who fell off a step, and the pruners were exposed, and he ended up with stitches in his hand. So this is also a safety thing, and it's just handy to grab them. It becomes second nature. Now, what Lori also has in her hands is the shears. These are hand shears, and those are.
They're rusty because nobody uses
Nobody uses them. And oiling would be another thing. They also have a bumper that prevents you from hitting your own knuckles. Those are going to be for really blunt trimming, such
Question
as
from the audience.
What kind of oil?
a mineral oil or just a regular 3-in-1 oil. Just anything, really. Oil is good. When you're putting them away for the winter, just mineral oil or 3-in-1 oil. Just a thin, light oil.
I never do that at all.
Yeah.
That's a good tip.
It is a really good tip because it'll keep that rust at bay. But these are shears that would go like on privet or a trimmed, squared off boxwood. We don't use, we can use that, but still you would do the fine stuff with a hand pruner. And hand pruning,
Can you see this?
yep. Oh yeah, she's going. She's going to go.
This is the only cut I'm going to do with
There we
edge
go.
pruners. Ta-da! Like Edward Scissorhands.
There you go.
All right.
Oh,
I
beautiful.
don't
Like a
like
pro.
using shears
Right.
because I want to make sure the plant is always nice and loose. And if you keep shearing, it gets really woody. And I'm going to show you that in a minute of how that's become woody. Otherwise, I just want to keep this thing nice and pruned and shaped and keep that little spiral.
Right.
So
It's what we call a natural shaping with a hand pruner, and there's no other way except to do it with a hand pruner. It's a natural shaping that follows, even though this is a topiary and it's artificially shaped, she is making it look like it grew that way naturally. So it's natural type pruning. And this is basically what we mostly focus on. And behind her is an espalier, which is an apple tree grown to a flat shape. It's been pruned and trained over years. It's common in Europe and common in small gardens, and it's shaped against the wall. It will fruit, it will bear fruit, and it could be trained on a trellis or something, but it's great for small area gardening. And that's espalier.
We use these as fences very often. If we're just trying to get a little privacy fence, I have one at I Square Roof. If you've ever gone there, or you should, because the outdoor rooftop garden is awesome. And this is what we did to kind of help screen off some of the utilities that are up on the roof. And then also create vines on wires to just create this real thin fence. But I love espaliers against really cool looking back like an art. This kind of texture.
Yep.
But see what's happening here? This is a problem. I want it to grow so that it's not pushing away. Here's another one.
So what she's doing is she's maintaining that flat shape. Anything that chooses to push in one direction or the other, she's making sure that it doesn't push against it.
And I want to still keep it from going out this way also. All right, very simple. And then down here there's a few suckers I know. Always keep those pruned off.
Now the definition of the suckers is the bottom will push up, and it's common with apples, crab apples, pears, things like that. The bottom will push up little volunteers from the stump, and those are called suckers, and you want to trim those off. The plant's going to put a lot of energy into that, and you don't need that. So
anything else you think need this?
No, I'm trying to get my screen to go.
If I wanted to, I could prune over here because I might not want to go in front. Same thing over here to train that. If I wanted to, I could prune it here so it goes more upwards. And one of the things as we are talking about pruning is, I don't know if you noticed, but it's constantly trying to direct the branches outward. So I'm pruning a lot of inward facing so that we're getting rid of a lot of the possible crossing branches and thinning it out and keeping some nice airflow.
So that's another terminology, the thinning, which is going to allow the airflow, the sunlight, and rain and stuff to kind of filter out. Now, we have another one that we're going to discuss, pruning old spent blossoms. This is a kalmia or a mountain laurel, which is just finished blooming. And those things like azaleas and rhodies will naturally shed their old blossoms, but this is the time to prune something after it's done blooming. Anything that's a spring or late spring bloomer, lilacs, forsythia, rhododendron, azalea.
I don't really need to do this though, right? I mean,
no, you don't. They'll naturally shed.
So a matter of aesthetics. Sometimes I do that here. You'll see rhododendrons have been picked off because people don't like to buy them with brown stuff on them. They actually don't realize that these are flowers that died. But otherwise we wouldn't do that. But here's something that's sticking out, and I don't like the fact that it had some sun damage. So I'm going to get rid of that. And if I want this to be overall about the same shape, I'm pruning off just some of that new growth.
So she's doing a natural shaping, once again, with a hand pruner to just maintain balance and to not have any errant branches that don't seem to fit in with the balance and shape of that plant. Also, we don't want the plant putting all that energy into one leader or one...
Is this good, or would you want this pruned down? Because it's the other thing.
I would prune it.
You would. Stepping away and really looking at it, because sometimes when you're too close,
Right.
you can't really see the overall shape.
Right.
So I am.
So she's looking for a junction where that node meets another leaf to encourage it. And I agree. I liked it pruned. And think about it, folks. Once you've done it, it's going to have to be, because you can't put it back. It's like your hair when you get a haircut. You have to think about these. And when I trim my apple trees, which can take a heavy pruning at my house, I step back quite a bit and look, and step back quite a bit and turn around and look at from different angles. So Lori's so experienced, she can do it right from above, but the rest of us sometimes take a little longer, take the time it needs to really examine and just say, yeah, I need to do this. All right, now we're going to go over to
And now
our...
I'm getting really fussy and pulling
Oh, now
out
she's
dead
fussing.
leaves
Can I ask
because
a question?
Sure.
Because you said this is like lilacs, forsythia, rhodies, azaleas, and stuff. So lilacs. Sometimes our lilacs get real flaky and.
Aha. That's right. Go ahead, Lori.
yeah. So they get real leggy.
Yeah, and how far back should you prune them?
All right, so you want to. This is a good rule of thumb: 1/3 every year. So if you're thinning out the bigger, older, thicker stuff, you're going to have fresh, young suckers, but those suckers are actually turning into great branches that will bloom. That's the good rule of thumb. A lot of times we don't get into renovating the shrubs until they're really thick and old and gnarly, and then we have to get in and do some really significant pruning. That has to be done in the winter. That's the best time because we're really removing a lot of foliage. Do it when it's dormant. When I say winter, it means after the leaves fall off and before they come out again.
Okay.
So it gives you plenty of time when the plant is dormant. It's not pushing new growth. And that also talks about you don't want to prune too late into September, October, because you will encourage new growth. It's warm enough sometimes even into deep September, October, that the plants will put new growth, and that's going to get nipped. It's not hardened off, and it gets nipped by the winter, cold winds and snow, and that's not a good time. So you do have to have that cutoff point where your plant will go dormant. Emphasis on being a dormant time. All right, so we've got this guy, which is another Japanese maple. And good questions, you guys. The audience is amazingly useful having them here, being able to ask live questions.
So when you spin this around, and again, we don't always have to have perfect plants, but this is higher over here, lower over there. But when I'm running my hand against it, it's all of a sudden it's really bunched up. And
Really
that
dense
is
there.
because you can see they have been pruning over the years across the top, and then you get all this witch's broom kind of branching, which becomes gnarly. And we like to thin that out. So the goal today on this one is to thin it out, and do we want to show off this bark a little bit more because they're such a pretty tree. And
So we're going to possibly uplift it, which is uplifting can be done for mowing under a low branch tree, or it could be done to clear and showcase some perennials underneath, or it could be done for just, let's say you're doing some beautiful landscape lighting and you want to showcase that beautiful structure of a birch or the bark of a paper bark maple or something. Then you're going to use that uplifting technique to showcase the trunk. And there are so many beautiful things. Even 9-bark have beautiful branches and the trunk peels. Sycamore trees, think of all the ones that you know of that have these beautiful, the heritage river birches, those beautiful peeling barks. And that's one way to showcase. Looks better already.
All right, so it's not quite balanced on the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead. I was debating on this.
Oh yeah, it's got to go. That's
All right.
much better. You guys
better?
agree?
Now we're much more balanced.
Right. Now we have to address the fact that the top is uneven too, and that it needs some thinning. Now thinning is going in, not necessarily changing the height, but thinning is letting those, air and sun and all that in, and giving the chance for the other lower plants to grow.
We like to start at the bottom like we just did and work our way up.
Oh yeah, she's doing it very systematically.
So I'm going in and starting to thin a lot of these tiny little branches that are all facing inwards, or there's a lot of crossing. I'm leaving the main branches. All right. And I'm trying to thin out, and then when we get to the top, it'll be more of shaping. Again, those outward facing branches, or pruning back to thicken it up in the center instead of instead of shearing it.
Yeah, and that canopy.
Somebody used the Edwards scissor hands, kind of.
That canopy is going to inhibit sunshine from getting down to those lower branches, almost defeating the purpose of, why shape it if the sun's not going to get to it? Why would we have the bottom all nice and shaped if the sun's not going to start to get to those and encourage new growth? So
I don't know if you noticed that a lot of them are just kind of breaking off. That's because they're dead from just not getting enough light. This is normal.
Yeah.
And that's the tree's way of self-pruning. just to get rid of and shut down.
It looks good so far. The bottom looks excellent. And this would make room for some nice perennials or ground covers. And I love the way Japanese maples just have their own thing. They almost have their own mind and their own structure. And it's a beautiful, beautiful tree to shape.
And I can feel that. I do this all the time. It's like combing my hair. You know when your hair gets gnarly
Yeah.
and you're trying to
Room it up.
Yeah, that's what I do. It's like combing
So an
hair.
educated hand can tell what's too thick and where there's a knot, just like in your hair, and what needs to be addressed and thinned. So this is another technique. Natural shaping, thinning. She's cutting damaged and dead out and letting sunshine in.
I'm going to expose this one because this is a perfect example of how do I decide. Well, this has already got some dead stubs because it was pruned like this before. If you can see these stubs here. And so again, the plant will try to naturally just shut down where it's putting too much energy. But now I'm like, all right, do I even want this here anymore? Should I take out the entire thing? And since I really want to do some serious thinning, and I know things will grow back, so don't get like really freaked out if you take something and go, oh, I wish I couldn't have done that.
It's not like a finger, it does grow back. So just watch your fingers.
So now I'm looking at this overall, and it's really thin on the inside. It's almost too thin. All right, well, I don't know, depends again on what you think.
Well, that's the way it grew. It's kind of the way it grew, too.
Aesthetically.
Yep.
So now, as I go up, I'm like, all right, I don't want it to only be, we call it lion tailing. If I kept pruning to the point where we just have a branch with a lot of foliage at the end, that's what we call, looks like a lion tail. All right, that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to go in and start to prune back and thin this out. So notice I'm just combing it again. And that's kind of how I feel. All right, this feels a little thick in here, so which one am I going to take back?
Wow, quite the branch. It likes you. It's still hanging on your phone.
Oh, look at that.
There you go. It likes you. It's like, don't let me do it. Actually, the plant, you can hear it saying, more betterer. I love it.
So, going in, kind of thinning out, and this is fun.
This is also, we're reducing. There's reduction cuts that will take down the size. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to top a tree if it has a central leader. We're not going to top it and just chop it. We're going to reduce the size, and sometimes a salesperson might say clearance. I need clearance. There's a wire, of a tall tree. It needs clearance. There's an air conditioning unit. You need to clear it from the air conditioning unit. The house, it needs to be 6 inches away at least. So you might trim to reduce the size of it because of aesthetics, or you might reduce it for clearance, so it needs to be away from some other structure that it's going to interfere with.
So this little knotted area right here is driving me crazy. And I know when I prune this out, it's going to open up and leave a little bit of a hole, but I also know it's going to grow back in. So I'm going to get rid of that because I want in there.
It's like a surgeon. She's going in.
So now we call it drop crotching, where we go down inside to thin it out. We took the longest ends and we go down to a branch inside. So we don't want you to see. The best compliment we get is when someone hires us to do pruning and they come home at the end of the day and they call and complain because they can't tell we pruned. That's
a compliment.
It is
when
a
you
compliment.
Can't tell.
I can tell you it's mostly men that do that because they want to see their plants
shot.
No. And instead, they don't realize that we just prune this down. Our hair is just, shaped perfectly. So my sister-in-law is a hairdresser, and that's why I keep going with it. She says she can't prune, and every time she touches pruner, she does an amazing job.
We'll look at the volume on the ground, and she's not going to remove more than a third of the growth. That's a rule of thumb. Sometimes it's a little bit more or less, but you take more than half of the plant and you're compromising its health. You really can't take more than that. So a quarter to a third is a really good volume to strive for to not take too much off. There is such a thing as taking too much. But
So,
wow, that's looking so much better. That
doesn't
cut really made a huge difference.
Just one cut, one drop crotched cut made a huge difference. All right. Now, I can go through and do a lot more thinning, but we have a lot more pruning to talk about, so I'll work on this later because this is my favorite thing to do.
Great.
I hang out here on the garden center on Saturdays and Sundays. It's my play with plants a couple of days and socialize.
Great.
How awesome is that?
Yes. And we really appreciate all the viewers who are joining us. This is Pruning with Lori Briccolo, the owner of Briccolo Tree and Lawn Care, which we have shortened to Briccolo Group. But this is one of her favorite things to do, and we're talking about renovating, thinning, natural shaping. And we have some audience members. There we go.
Cedar pole. This is probably over a year old because it's so dark. And I can see that it wasn't pruned at the right angle, but I'm not going to touch that now. It's too big of a branch and it's already compartmentalized, so I know that it's unlikely insect or disease is going to get in here at this point. But the idea would have been if I cut it at an angle, it would have closed over like some of these old branches have already closed over completely.
Yeah, they're calloused. And if you see, there's a little bit of a stress start on that was from that branch. If you look on my side, Lori, there's a bit of a, you can't see it, but you're right there, there's a little bit of a fissure that was formed in response, so maybe it was a good thing that that branch was removed. But again, it adds adds character. Japanese maples just have beautiful character. No two are alike. There's hundreds of varieties.
So what should we do with this? We've got this hole here, and we want to get this shrub or tree to fill back in.
Right.
All right. In order to do that, we see it's lower here, high up here. If I start pruning back some of the long ends, just like you do a house plant where you're pinching back the top and you're forcing more growth down in here. Now, I'm not going to get a lot of growth right here, but I want this branch to start to fill in. I'd like these to start to fill in.
They'll be inspired.
There's much more balance.
Yep.
And so I'm going to come up here and go, all right, do I need this?
So she's doing a reduction cut, which is going to inspire the hormones in the plant to thicken at the bottom. Now that she's trimmed some things, it's going to inspire that plant. And it's also going to create better balance and give it a chance to look fuller and maintain a natural shape rather than half and half, one side's higher. Now, that could be because of the sun. It was growing in the direction of the sun, or the way it was placed, or the way it was trimmed years ago. But it's our job to rectify that and make it as aesthetically beautiful as we can.
Now, should I take off more on
Yes,
the top?
I think from my vantage, I don't know, what do you guys vote?
This side?
Just the hair,
back.
4 or 6 inches, that kind of thing. She's oh yeah, there you go.
right,
Very nice. And then the tip of that one, yeah, perfect.
All right.
You see the difference? I can see it very well from here, you guys. It looks so good. It's a good question, Lori. What do you think? How old? What do you think the age of this tree is?
Based on this trunk, it's got to be. They only grow maybe a quarter of an inch to a half an inch a year, typically. Most of these thread leaf types. So this is probably a good 10 years old. This is a pretty mature tree, maybe 8 years. If they're growing in the nurseries, sometimes they'll grow a little bit faster initially, but now it's in this container and it's limited. So now it's almost bonsai. It needs a home. It needs to go in the ground so it can really spread out its roots and take off again.
And that's one thing we never even talked about is certain plants in a container, once you're planting them, they could get a girdled root. That is a root that circles the pot. And you want to remove that too. So that would be a type of pruning that you would do with your scissors or your pruners or your loppers. She's got some major loppers in her hand, and she's going. Whoa!
You know I would never do that.
No.
But rarely do I need to use that kind of a tool.
Right. That's a huge lopper.
But it certainly makes life a lot easier if I do.
Right.
I certainly can't prune it with that.
And another tool you used today was a pruning saw.
Where did my saw go?
I'm not sure where your pruning saw was, but it's a generally a folding saw that you pull out and you use a pulling motion to cut.
who knows? I use my tools all the time.
We'll find it eventually.
I love my little handsaw. It just folds up this small. Pull it out. And what I wanted to say though about when you're pruning a branch like this, you would always make an undercut here. So if I had my little saw, which I'm never going to take this branch off, but I would undercut here, and then right where the scar is, you can see where the main trunk is, and then there's a ring for the branch. We call that branch collar. So where the collar is, I'm going to prune right at the edge of the collar at that angle. And the fact that I undercut here means it's not going to rip off the bark as it falls.
I mean, how many have you seen peels where the whole trunk is compromised because they peeled the bark? And once that bark is peeled, you're really doing the tree a lot of disservice. So got to be really careful with it. All right, so this side is going to be addressed with the long ends that we talked about, and she's going to situate it. You can see how unbalanced that tree is now.
How do you know when a branch is going out too much and it's too much weight?
Ah, good question.
So, let's see if I can explain that. I guess because, well, first of all, if you have like crab apples or anything that has fruit on it, that's real obvious because all of a sudden they'll start drooping, and that's way too much weight. And when they start drooping like that, it's a lot of stress on the joint, and then it weakens it. And during a windstorm or ice storm, it can then fall back. So the key is, again, making sure you're not lion tailing. This is where I see a lot of that kind of problem, where the branches have been, the trees have been thinned out, but nobody climbed out to the ends of the branches on these huge trees to thin the rest of it. So now it's exposed, and it's more likely it's got too much weight. So it's about weight balance, really. And I don't know how to explain that any better.
Yeah, so look for the stress on that plant and its unnatural drooping or falling. And if you're experiencing during a windstorm broken branches, something's going on. So also for fruiting trees, you reduce the number of fruit so that it's not so heavy. And it produces better quality fruit rather than quantity. So you'll do that selective in pears and peaches and apples, where you're going for production, but you're going for quality rather than quantity. All right, we also talked about the timing of, there's early spring for your summer plants, like Rose of Sharon and other things that are going to be blooming, like your butterfly bushes, things like that. You're going to do a spring trimming. If it's a spring bloomer, you've missed the opportunity if you've waited too long. After the bloom is when you should do a spring bloom.
A good example is forsythia blooms really early in the spring.
Yes.
And then the buds are already starting to set for next year.
Yep, takes a whole another year. Same with rhodioes, azaleas, etc. So trimming right after they're done flowering is a great time. Now this is a particular bloomerang lilac, which blooms a little bit in the fall. So it's done blooming. It's been done blooming for about a month, but we can just look at this and see that there's a little bit of shaping to do, a little natural shaping. There's this central leader that she's going to do a drop crotch on that and go way down where it's going to be hidden, and she's going to remove that whole tall guy. Nobody, if you didn't know it wasn't there, you wouldn't have even seen.
You won't even miss it, right?
No, you won't even miss it. And this is only going to strengthen the plant for next year. You're not taking off the chance that it'll rebloom in the fall, because the bloomerangs do a little rebloom in the fall. But she's going to clean it up a little bit.
So
and
this one I actually cut to another crotch about halfway in this. So, but this one here, this long one, it doesn't have anything else growing on it. All right, so I'm going to cut this one right down to the ground. This is kind of like how you would do the lilacs or anything that's got a lot of long shoots with not a lot of growth. All right, except you only want to do a third of the time.
right.
All right, so this is bugging me here. Yeah, shaping. Got some dead here. So yeah.
For forsythia, do you ever like thin out the middle like you were talking about over here?
Yes. So then that's when we call it more winter renovation. One, you can see the structure so much better when there's no leaves on it. And you get right in and go down and pick out the thickest, oldest wood. cut it right down at the base. Usually need a handsaw because by this time it's all overgrown. All right, and the reason forsythias are gorgeous, even though they're not native, but they're so pretty in the spring, is when they're arching, you know? And it drives me crazy. I see these commercial properties, everybody's shearing them. I call them mowers. They mow the lawn, they mow the shrubs. Stop mowing. And that's how they get the witch's broom. And then in the spring, we have this nice, tight little forsythia that has like a couple little flowers on it, little tiny sprigs, because it wasn't allowed to do its natural thing. And so that's really about all I'm going to do on this one.
All right. It looks a lot better, and it's still very full. She took only 2 major branches off of that, and it's much better looking already.
And it's easy to keep going and getting like crazy. So at some point you just go, all right, stop, and walk away. All right. This is a problem that most people have. They prune, and they step back, and they prune some more, and next time it's all the way down to this little tiny thing, and then you're like, oh, I just pruned off the entire row. All right,
this rose is a little on the lopsided size.
Oh, that smells so
And it's got
good.
some spent blossoms, some buds that are spent, and we want to trim it up a little bit. Deadheading is what we're removing, not only for aesthetics, but to encourage that plant to bloom all summer long. So we're going to deadhead those rows, and the exception would be in the fall when you want the plant to go to hips. The rose hips are not only a source of food for animals or birds, but they signal the plant that it's time to go dormant. You're done blooming. So the exception for deadheading for roses is the fall when you let it go to hips. Those little balls of orange that signal the plant that time to take a chill pill and go dormant for the winter.
Now,
you just leave the rose hips on.
yes, for the whole winter.
Yep.
Oh, they're so pretty.
They are.
Yes.
They're great in arrangements
Yep.
for your Christmas or your fall arrangements. They're fantastic.
Now,
So,
do we care about the shape on the rose?
It doesn't look very good. It looks like it's like the right hand side is missing.
it's kind of one-sided.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Definitely one-sided.
So I would plant it like that because I don't want to lose all this beautiful growth. I
Right,
just want
right.
this to catch up.
Right.
And I don't want, now after this is done blooming, I could cut that down to here.
Right. And when it's
All right.
dormant
Yeah.
in the early spring or late winter, it could be shaped. And knockouts, that's a particular knockout, a shrub rose, they can take a really good pruning. They really can. And they respond with, yay, I got a chance to grow and go show off again. So they're a great plant that can take a lot of pruning. Carpets and drift roses, you can trim them too, but they sprawl a little wider than they get tall. And so they are left almost better natural. Climbing roses bloom on second year wood. So climbers, what I did with mine is I renovated my entire climbing rose. I cut it down to 6 to 8 inches and waited 2 years, 3 years, and it responded with, hello, I'm here, show off, and it looked fantastic. So climbers, they do bloom on second year wood, so don't cut all
My
your,
climber,
don't,
I just go in and prune out a few thick ones
Yep,
that are
yep.
looking like it's going to be really tangled because I want it to be
you want it as
full,
horizontal as possible.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
great.
So,
All right, and roses aren't true climbers. People call them climbers. They don't really climb. They just sprawl, and you can attach them with hangers, that kind of thing. Okay, she's got her hand shears.
all right.
All right, can we just go back to the roses? Years ago, people like to say, cut them back like on the leaf, 3 or 5.
They're all 3 or 5. So that's a great rule of thumb because they're all 3 or 5. So every time I'm pruning, if I prune down to here, now I'm pruning at where there's a crotch of 3 branches. 3 leaves. If I came down here, there's 5. So they don't grow with 1 leaf. So the idea is that you're pruning the entire little branch to the next branch, and that next branch could be a 3-leaf or a 5-leaf.
Especially in the instance of a tea rose, where it is on a stem, and you want to go all the way to the bottom of that. A, to have it in your vase, nice and tall, but B, to have a junction of leaves where it can regrow. All right, we've got a nice little juniper here.
And I'm just going to show you what people do all the time because it's hanging out in the sidewalk. So they come through and they go, ah!
I knew it.
No!
Guilty.
Don't
Guilty.
do it.
Guilty.
Don't do it, because then it becomes this gnarly thing, and it gets thicker and thicker. And then when you're walking along the sidewalk, all you see is this like
Blunt
thick, woody, ugly edge of this beautiful plant. Where so I got a little dead wood here, or it's hanging out further than I want to, way inside. The plant name off of that, but. Look at how natural that is, and I got rid of the ugly deadwood without, you can't even tell that I pruned it.
It's instantly better. She's already, she's hiding those cuts, and she's already letting more sun and air in there, and the plant's way happier. Yep.
Look, it just needed a little trim, and
look how much more
faster.
balanced it looks. It looks fantastic.
When you do the shearing, or gas-powered mowers, I call them, or hand shearing, you get so much more clipping. This is a lot easier to clean up. Now, if I was on a job and training our employees, I would ask them to bring a tarp with them and keep pulling it, because then they don't even have any raking to do. But when you're doing the shearing, those little pieces go all over, and it's in the mulch, and it makes a mess. A branch, cut, and throw. Simple. And it's so much less time, really. And it's easier on my back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What else we got
Who's
here?
next?
Look at this beautiful. All right.
So here's our mountain type hydrangea. It's a lace cap, serrata, some people call them. This one there's one of 6 categories of hydrangeas, and I know it's a mysterious thing about trimming hydrangeas. I do have a sheet, a handout that people can get. The mountain type, the serrata, and the big leaf or mop head do not need to be trimmed per se. They bloom on old wood, which is last year's, and it goes all through the winter, and it may get nipped by the frost, but it blooms on that. So if you cut it after August 1st, you're cutting off next year's blossoms, and you want to just trim it to shape in the spring, cut out the old dead stuff, but you don't want to cut those tips because you're cutting off this year's blooms. There's other categories.
And don't cut too early, just because it's dead looking. You have to wait.
You've got to wait for the green
roses
to erupt on those little leaves. Yep. And so we'll give you a handout, but basically those 2, leave them alone. They bloom on old wood. The exception is our new types of endless summer mop heads, which bloom on old and new wood. You'll see them in the electric blue pot, and they're easy to grow. The old-fashioned macrophylla from the French ones, zone 6, they weren't always reliable.
Now
but
notice this. This is new growth, and this is growth from earlier this year. And if this shape bothers you, we could prune that right off down to this. But it's got all these beautiful flowers coming. So I don't want to. I can live with it looking a little misshapen. And maybe I want to save that and cut it and bring it in the house later. So,
and as a rule of thumb, we're not going to cut stuff with blossoms. We really don't, unless it was really errant and it looked terrible. All right, who else we have? We have holly, and we have a boxwood and a pyrus over here.
All right, so we're getting into some more evergreens.
Evergreens, yep. Did the hummingbird just fly by, or was that a bumblebee? Couldn't tell. Hummingbird sometimes she dive bombs around in here.
I love my hummingbird. Yeah. So this is Pyrrhus, and similar. Do you like the shape of it?
I like it. It's got a couple of little.
Okay.
But I kind of like that interesting shape.
That's exactly what Jay said. She's like, I like it. It's very arty, kind of, it's got a nice sculpture to it. If I wanted to, I could prune off a little bit here, or I could come way down in here. But I want this plant to grow, because also knowing what the plant is supposed to be when you go to buy it.
Yeah, look at the maturity.
This is a cute little thing at 2 feet, but this is going to be 6 feet. All right, so it's going to get large. If I keep pushing it back, I'm really going against its nature. All right, so we're going to leave it alone.
Yeah, so plan for long term for the mature height.
Leave it alone.
It is.
Yes.
Pyrrhus is evergreen. Yeah.
And deer resistant.
Yeah.
Unlike the holly. The holly, the deer love. So, this holly, and this is really typical. If I turn it around, it's nice and full. But we get this kind of question all the time. My plant's dying. It's in the foundation. It's dying from the bottom up. And if you just prune back the new growth again to try and force some of this to thicken up. That's going to make a huge difference. The other part is, does it really bother you? Or maybe we prune off a little bit more to make it look slightly more tree form and actually not worry about all that misbalance. So now, I don't know what you think, but now I've turned this one into a tree, but I don't like this, obviously. So I'm going to come in here and I'm cutting off the berries because I want to still push out some new growth in here. And if you were planting this, you'd probably put it behind, you know, towards the foundation.
And she's also achieving a better balanced plant. It's going to push out some more thickness on the bottom and still maintain a nice airy but balanced top. And it's just going to be an overall better balanced shrub. Looking good, looking good.
All right.
And for those of you that are looking at these will be red berries come winter, and you'll need the male to pollinate to make these berries. So you'll often see blue prince, blue princess, and this is a blue princess. Correct, Lori?
Yes.
Okay.
This is princess.
And look at the berries.
We know it's princess because it has berries,
right.
And the boys' princess don't have any berries.
Right. So this is a beautiful plant that's got lots of berries, and they'll really shine in the wintertime with that red for your holiday arrangements and for your landscape.
And so now is the best time to do the holly too?
If you, for shaping, yes. Yep.
Almost all these evergreens, this is a great time, usually before the end of August, because they've pushed out their new growth. Yes. They've pushed out candles, which are the new tips on like mugo pines and things like that. And now's a good time. They got plenty of time if they have new growth to harden off before winter, yes. And you're just achieving a nicer shape. So those are good questions. You guys are a terrific audience.
All right, and we're getting down to just a couple more. So again, if I want this to be square, all right, which a lot of clients do, I just don't like to see anything abused and constrained. I just feel for the plant. You know, like I want to be loose and yeah, all right, you're getting a little trim. That's all. Nothing major. I want to keep that natural shape. I want to let it grow. In this case, it's only going to grow to 2 to 3 feet. But I let it, they grow naturally in that round shape. So I few clips and it keeps it under control. And personally, I
think that one long end near your left arm has got to go.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I like my boxwood really trimmed. Also, there are certain ones looking good. There are certain ones that are more pyramidal shaped. They actually grow like in the shape of a pyramid.
Yes.
And those ones are really great for putting lights in and for decorating with holiday ornaments and things like that. Great job, Lori. One last thing we're going to talk about is the renovation clip on the privet hedge. We got these branches to illustrate what renovation is like. Okay, we're going to clear up our work area here. We're moving further and further away from our audience who's definitely following us closely. We love it. And these branches illustrate a thicker, older branch that we cut out the entire thing right from the base with those giant loppers to let some air in and to rejuvenate younger, thinner branches from the bottom, so it's not going to be so woody on top.
So we have a hedge of privet. It's been here since way before we bought the farm here. And I can show you, the audience, we can go and walk over and look at a hedge. But it was just getting way out of control. It was starting to grow into the pathway to get into the upper barn here. And I don't know, I just didn't like it so tall. It's just a matter of opinion. And so every couple of years we come in and just really thin it out. This you can do anytime you want. In fact, with privet, I have at my house that was this tall. We bought the house just a couple of years ago, and and it's in the front yard, so I was feeling really closed in. We cut it right down to the ground, and now it's up about 2 feet. And I want to keep it at 3 feet, so I'll be able to do that every summer. Just keep the long ends back. So this is the kind of plant that you can definitely do that with. Don't do that with your lilacs. All right, because you never know if you're going to get enough. And then, so what we did is, like, all right, this really tall branch, I started to follow it down, and then when I looked, it's really gnarly down here. It's big, thick. So that's how I determine if it's getting decayed, then I want to cut that right out completely. All right, so goodbye.
Yep. Wrestle that.
And then
thing.
with that, yeah,
There we go.
there we go. All right. Then when I look and I find some branches, these are suckers because it's really thick around the base. You know, this, I did not open this plant up. There's about, that's not even 10% of what I've pruned.
It's not even a drop in the bucket.
It's just so thick. And this is only 2-year growth. So I got this long, no branches on the middle, coming straight up, and it's going to start rubbing on the other branches. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to get rid of you.
Yep.
And it's very forgiving. So this is one that you can have fun and practice on because it's going to come back.
Does the tulip bloom?
It does.
Yes, it has little tiny flowers that look like lilacs, and they actually have a fragrance.
Yeah, the white and the bees do like
Yep.
them, but
Yeah.
otherwise it has not much else value
Yeah.
except for screen.
It's non-native, so it's not a plant that I recommend growing, but a lot of properties you inherit old, and what do we do with it?
It seems like my Ironically house, I believe, has that along the side. And it grows very fast.
Yes, there's a lot of maintenance. I trim mine 3 times a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And once a year.
Yeah, well, here, but we have to maintain ours to 4.5, 5 feet so I can see over it. I'm only 5 foot tall. I barely can see it.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, we want to wrap it up.
Yes.
There's specifics for fruit trees. There's specifics for raspberries versus other berries. So really you should consult a professional for those kind of things to get your maximum yield out of those kind. We'll just surmise what we did. We talked about renovating. We talked about thinning. We talked about reduction cuts. We talked about uplifting. And we talked about using natural shaping with our pruners. And we really thank Lori Briccolo for doing such a perfect, excellent job on our pruning. There's more to learn, and we'll hopefully see you next week and in the future. We're going to thank our audience. Bye, guys. Please join us again. And come see us here at Briccolo. We're open 7 days a week still. And we have a multitude of pollinator and native plants. We will help you with your garden needs. See you soon.
Bye.
How do you turn it off?